I just want to take in this moment, see your faces, those of you on the live stream, this team, those of you providing music, because this is my first and last time speaking from this bima. In about 38 hours, I will officially be ordained as a rabbi, an accomplishment achieved after 5 years of rabbinic study, 1 year lived in Israel, and 16 previous years of schooling. In some ways, this is a title well-deserved, and yet it is one that requires a lifetime of continued learning and growth in order to embody the true honor that this title conveys. As I approach my ordination ceremony, I keep asking myself, well, what does this ceremony change? And my conclusive and likely controversial opinion is that it changes nothing. Rather, it is the moments that have led to this ceremony and the moments such as the one that we are in here together tonight that shape me as a person and as your soon-to-be rabbi, assistant rabbi, a rabbi forever in development. This week's Torah reading, Parashat Kedoshim, a section of the Torah devoted to the concept of holiness, could not have arrived at a more opportune time for me and my rabbinic and cantorial cohort. 4 times in this week's Parsha, God charges, Kedoshim tihu, you shall be holy. What is it that makes one holy? Is it a clergy person's hands, such as those of my professors, which will grace our heads with blessing? Or is it the accumulation of the daily, seemingly mundane ways of being in our world? Parashat Kedoshim teaches us that holiness is not a thing or a quality conferable by one person to another. Rather, it is something that each of us cultivates together at every juncture of life. That is right, I said each of us. Being a clergy person, I have learned, offers no proprietary claim to what God calls holiness. The plural suffixes of God's charge, Kedoshim tihu, implies that holiness is not restricted to any one person or any type of person, not any one job or type of vocation, but rather that every one of us is capable of attaining holiness. And further, that holiness is best achieved in the context of community. Perhaps this is because no one person is perfect, that the tapestry created by our multiplicity is itself the holiness God beseeches. In Parashat Kedoshim, the Torah delineates a slew of methods for how we human beings should treat one another, because our holiness rests in our togetherness. This is not to say we as individuals are not enough or not whole, but rather, as Martin Buber implies in his philosophical writings, that human relationships and the stuff that goes into them, like bearing one another's burdens, sharing laughter and love, being vulnerable and building trust, all manifest the presence of God and therefore combine to fashion holiness. It is no accident that this week's Parsha about holiness begs us, Ve'ahavta lera'acha kemocha, love yourself as your fellow. Many rabbis have argued that this mandate is the cornerstone of our Jewish faith. This phrase instructs us to acknowledge one another's dignity. But in order to do this, we must first learn how to love ourselves, how to appreciate what each of us brings to the pursuit of holiness. So upon the eve of my ordination, as I ask myself, and many of you may be wondering, what will I bring to this already thriving and incredible congregation? I am here to see the holiness in you, mostly when you cannot see it yourself. Even with all of our imperfections, mine included. I am here to utilize the wisdom of our tradition to help each of us see the holiness in each other as a community. This experience is special for me to have the ability to return to my hometown, the place and people that have been foundational in my formation, both as a person and as a rabbi. To say you are all my community has been true for the entirety of my life. Or HaChaim, an 18th century Moroccan rabbi, emphasized that God's charge, Kedoshim Tihu, is posed in the future tense, in order to indicate that achieving holiness, both as clergy people and as lay people, is an ongoing process. I am incredibly grateful that as I continue to grow, this community will continue to shape me, and that I may be able to aid its growth in return. So here we are, my first time speaking from this bima. I want to thank all of you, those of you in person, all of you here, and those of you watching on the live stream. For whether you know this or not, your presence alone tonight has made this Shabbat incredibly meaningful for me and is a stepping stone along our communal quest for holiness. In the Kedusha de Yotzer, the morning prayer in praise of God's holiness, the angels chant, Kulam ke'echad, onim ve'omrim be'yir'ah. All together as one, chant and speak with reverence and awe. I pray that along this collective journey, we can work together to bring forth a whole greater than the sum of its parts. Shabbat Shalom.